Hey there, I am Barb Higgins, and this is 1,000 Tiny Steps. In this podcast, I share my stories of love, loss, triumph, and tragedy as I continue to retrace my steps and ponder what led to the death of my daughter Molly. By doing so, I hope to not only help myself, but to bring purpose and possibility to those who listen. If you are ready to laugh, cry, shake your head in disbelief, then tie, buckle, lace up, or slip on your shoes, and join me as we begin our 1,000 Tiny Steps. Hey everybody, it's me Barb, welcoming you to 1,000 Tiny Steps, episode 199 maybe? It's pretty far up there. Today I am talking to my third local friend who lives in a very small neighborhood in Concord. Jenn, thank you for coming on. Jenn I've known forever. I have friends in my life that I don't really know how I met them. I just know I've always known them on some level. My big connection with Jenn that comes to mind for me is her oldest son, Tyler, who I don't know if it was just other kids or DJing with Nazi or whatever, but I always knew who he was. And then like me, she's got big grown-up kids and little teeny kids and a few in between. So we have a lot in common that way. But why I'm having Jenn on today is because, how old are you, Jenn?
I'm going to be 46 this summer.
Okay, so, we turn 40, right? You buy a motorcycle, you get a tattoo. You go on vacation to Hawaii. You do some big thing because you're 40 and what am I going to do? And here I am. Jenn went to mortuary school. That's right. Being the mother of a child in heaven, had a lot of interaction with funerals. And the one thing we all know in our lives is that we will in fact be involved with somebody who dies, and we will have to take part in organizing services and all that sort of stuff. So clearly funeral homes are everywhere, but when you hear that that's what someone does, it sort of sparks an interest, or it did with me anyway. So Jenn, tell me a little bit about like where you grew up and sort of what your life was like. We can get into how you became so fabulous at what you do now.
Oh boy, my life, you could write like a soap opera with my life. So I'll talk about how I became interested in death because I started in childhood. I started school in Concord, New Hampshire before I moved to Derry. Like everyone in 1986 in Concord, New Hampshire, I was invested into teacher in space program, Krista McAuliffe.
Right.
And I knew her daughter at the time because I used to play on the playground with her because I was the same age as her. And I remember watching it in Rumford School and watching the Challenger, and we're all cheering for Krista. And it was the most exciting moment I can remember as a child. And then that all changed like that. When the shuttle exploded, and I noticed that the teachers were in tears, I knew something was up and I needed to know what. And that just sparked, I needed to know everything. And I just kept asking all these questions and asking everybody, and no one would really tell me much. Yeah. Oh, you'll find out when you're older. You'll find out when you're older. That wasn't good enough for me. So it sparked a lifelong interest. And then fast forward a couple years later, in 88, when my grandfather passed away, I went with my mom to the funeral home to make arrangements. I was not leaving that funeral home until I got a tour of the place. So I'm in Waters Funeral Home, and my mom's mortified because she has her 8-year-old daughter there going, I want to see this place. And my mom's trying to make arrangements. They let me see everywhere except the embalming room, which for me wasn't good enough, but I was a child. Then fast forward, I grew up, went to Derry, and did not graduate high school, believe it or not. Dropped out, got my GED because I was horrible at school, and had this but I still studied everything to do with death when I was younger. I was always interested in it. Freaked out many people, scared many people. Then I kind of grew up and had a failed marriage. When I was 21, I got married because I was pregnant with Tyler. Failed marriage. He left me when I was pregnant with Rafe, and then moved on. And I was working at Market Basket. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to be a loser for the rest of my life, working at Market Basket, single for the rest of my life. That's how I accepted my life. And I just felt like, yep, nothing to do. And then sharing my custody with the boys every other weekend. I hated that, but had to. Until they were 10 years, Tyler was about 10 years old. My ex-husband's like, I don't want to see them anymore. My current wife doesn't want the kids around, so we're not going to take them anymore. So he signed away his rights. I had to really change my work schedule, and my boss was not happy because I wasn't available on weekends because I had 2 young kids. And then going through that, and it was just like a nightmare. Like I had to live with my parents for a bit. Then I moved into low income housing, and I'm feeling the lowest of low. And then I met Drew. I forget how I met. Like we went to a cookout and we just connected. What I didn't know, because I met his 2 kids, they were going through the same thing. Their birth mom didn't want anything to do with them. She hasn't seen them now in like 8 years. So they're my kids. They call me mom. And now Drew and I are married. And Tyler always called Drew dad. So then we got married. And when we had Chip, who's the youngest, when Chip was about 4 years old, I was talking with a friend of mine, and she's like, what are you going to do now that, because ended up becoming a stay-at-home mom, made more sense. Drew's an electrician. He made more money. Made more sense for me to stay at home instead of pay for childcare, which Market Basket would pay for maybe 1 week of childcare. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So made more sense for me to be stay-at-home mom. And then when COVID hit and everybody was like home, I got into a lot of thinking like I need to do something with my life. And I was talking with one of my friends. I'm like, I've always wanted to be a mortician, but I didn't graduate high school. And she goes, Jen, that was 20 years ago. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
You can do this. I'm like, no, I can't. No, I can't. No, I can't. And I talked to Drew about it. And he's like, yeah. I goes, one thing. I go, what's that? He goes, if you want to succeed, please get tested for ADHD, which I did. Found out I'm ADHD.
Yeah.
Got the right therapy for it and the right meds. And then I went on to school, and not only did I graduate, I graduated valedictorian, top of the class. I know, me too, because I'm like, oh my God, if I can do this from high school dropout to become valedictorian of a college, I never thought in my life that would ever happen.
No.
And then it just hit me like, this is where I'm meant to be.
I want to interject quickly. The ADHD piece, medicine for women, I have a chip on my shoulder about that because of how Molly was treated. But we are so quick sometimes to diagnose boys and men with these things because that's where the focus typically is. And women are sometimes the afterthought in medicine. Like, here's how this works. Oh, I wonder how it works in women, as opposed to looking at it independently. But my brother, Jonathan, massively ADHD, dropped out of high school, not because he wasn't smart. You're clearly very smart, or you couldn't be a valedictorian of anything. And you are. So that's your brain. But he couldn't function. He just couldn't put high school together. And he has a PhD now. But it's the same thing. He had to figure it out. He had to grow up. He went through massive medicine changes and depression. ADHD in adult men is often really massive depression. And so he worked all that through. And in this life process, went to college in his late 20s and then got a master's and then his PhD. Same thing though, GED, PhD. So you're a GED valedictorian of mortuary school. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
But it just struck a chord with me because sometimes it's not that we don't have what we need. We just don't have the ability to use it to get what we need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was told all the time growing up, like, you're just flighty, you're spacey, because I was always forgetting things. I'd lose things. I'd lose money. I'd lose keys. I'd lose my phone. I'd lose everything. I once lost my purse for a few months, didn't even realize I lost it because of my ADHD jumbled brain and also severe depression and being a single mom of 4 and 5-year-old at the time. Concord police calls me up, go, oh, we found your purse. I'm like, wait, and I'm sitting there thinking in my head, I didn't know I was missing it. I didn't know I was missing it. How bad is that?
Yeah.
That was the ADHD.
Yes, it is.
Fogs your brain.
Yeah, big time.
Yep.
Wow. Do you have to apply and get accepted to mortuary school? How does it all even work?
I looked up and I found Fine Mortuary College, which is where I went. And you have to apply. And then what they do is they will interview you. And I had an interview and they want transcripts. And I explained to them like what happened, like about how I dropped out and got my GED, and they're like, that's okay. So they did like testing for me to see how I was academically, and I did fine. So I was like, okay. But that was after being months of therapy for my brain to learn how to use my executive function, which I still suck at.
Oh, me too.
Yep.
ADHD, by the way. I have the hyperactivity piece, but that isn't, I can sit on my ass for hours without a
Yeah.
problem. But yeah, so task analysis for me is the hard part. And when I have to execute executive functioning, I'm fine. I was a special ed teacher at Walker School for 15 years. So I taught hyperactive little boys and girls how to organize. But when I have to apply that to my own life, I'm a disaster. I do so much better to just punch in, okay, what do I do next? And tell me what to do. And then I can get a million things done. When I have that external structure or schedule, I'm so productive. And, now I set my own schedule, which means nothing gets done. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I'm just one of those where it just constant, like, I need the structure. I need the list. I need stuff written
Exactly.
down.
Yeah,
And I'm
exactly.
one of those, I have to write things down, but sometimes I have to say it out loud too, which my
Same,
kids
same.
look at me like I'm crazy.
Like,
Yep.
why are you telling yourself not to forget that? So I won't forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I look at them, I'm like, I'll look them dead in the face, go, do you want to ride home today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, don't make fun of me for saying it out loud. And they just like, okay.
Okay, whatever. Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. You did well with the academic piece, and so then obviously you're with a class of people. Like, do you all start at the same time?
We did a orientation,
Yeah.
which was the week before classes started, and then they give us our schedules after you pick your classes. I did two classes a week because it's a 10-week program.
Got it.
Well, 10-week semester, I should say, because it was like a 2.5 to 3 year program for me.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
10-week semesters, and they were intense classes. I was told by someone who took nursing classes and mortuary, and then she was in mortuary classes with me. She was like, this is so much harder than being a nursing student. I looked at her like, are you crazy? Because we did it all Zoom, but we would study together too, me and this girl,
Yeah.
Michelle. And
Yeah.
she's like, no, seriously, this is much harder. And I'm like, well, that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you take for, I mean, I know you must take all of the running a funeral home type classes and that kind of stuff, but there's so much we don't logically know about the body, because now when people die, it's all invisible. It gets taken away and cared for in private. We don't lay out our loved ones on our dining room table and invite the neighborhood to come look. We don't do that anymore. It used to be people took care of the dead, put them in a box and bury them. Like it was just a different beast. And now with the ability to travel and embalming and cremation and all of the different ways the bodies are handled, you must have to learn a ton about the body.
We learn a lot of pathology. We learn a lot of anatomy and physiology. We went deep into the veins and arteries and which way the blood would flow, and if there's blockages, how to do that. We've learned the chemistry behind embalming, because you have to embalm each body. It's different. Like
Right.
if there's a body that was severe edema, you would use a little bit more formaldehyde to get rid
The
of
fluid.
the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. It's not like step one, step two, step three. It's step one, but all these different things might come up depending on who you're embalming. Step two, because of step one, you might need to do this, this, or this.
You have to really analyze every little thing of that body. And we look at everything. When we take someone into our care, we do it's called initial case analysis. It's pretty much not really case, it's condition.
Yeah.
And we're looking over every little thing in that body. And we'll also look for distinguishing things for identification, because not everybody wants to come in and see, and they'll just say, hey, do they have this scar, and this tattoo? And here's a picture of them.
Yeah.
Because they don't
Yeah.
want, which I
Right.
understand.
Yep.
Because
Yep. It's
and then
traumatic.
some we say, yeah, I really highly recommend against viewing this. Do you have a picture of them that was taken within the past 6 months? Any certain scars? We do that. But for classes, like we did learn about that. We also took like a cremation course too, because there's certain things in the body that you need to take out to being cremated.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, if someone has a pacemaker, you take that out, because otherwise it will blow up the machine.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So,
God, I never thought of that. What about like, this is very technical, but like if somebody has a lot of metal, like metal in their bones and stuff, can that just,
that will go in. You can't really take that out. The only
Yeah.
way they would take it out is if they have anything with a lithium battery in it.
right. Right. Oh yeah. You
Because
can't
that
burn
will-
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So I remember with Molly, we unplugged her on May 7th and we buried her on May 11th. And with the Baha'i faith, we don't do embalming. So she just stayed in the cooler for those days. And I know with each passing day, they were so wonderful to us. They brought her up and let us visit her every single day she was there until Tuesday, because Wednesday was the burial. And they said, okay, we have to dress her and place her. And so I had everything, ready for her. And they said, hindsight, we probably should have dressed her right after she came off life support because we could have moved her around and put everything on. But, 3 days of being a dead person, skin integrity goes away. So they just basically said, we're going to have to cut the dress and place it around. I said, that's fine. And they made her beautiful. Like they really did. They really did. You couldn't tell that there was anything not right about the dress. It looked like it was on her. But I remember just thinking to myself, and for me, it was helpful. That was my little girl. And it was with each passing day, watching her body become less and less alive was helpful for me to say goodbye to her. It's not that way for a lot of people. I found comfort in it because there was less and less Molly in that body with each passing day. But it was hard for me to picture manipulating her body or moving her. Like it was all just so hard to take sometimes, if that makes sense to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We had this beautiful pink casket. And so I took all these pictures too, a million pictures. And people are like, why would you take pictures? And I'm like, I'm sorry, she's my child. Like
that's your daughter. Of course.
Yes, I wish she was alive, but I don't want to try to remember this in my head. I want to look at it and it will bring back a million other memories. And we chose things to bury. So much of what you do though, so viewers, here's another little fun thing. My dad died. I called a funeral home where she works, which is our chosen funeral home. And I'm chatting away. And of course, I'm chatting with this wonderful woman and she's polite and kind to me and everything else. And once we were through all the work was done, she could let me know that it was her. You had to be your professional. It was just like such a relief for me though. Like, oh my God. So you learn all the factual stuff in mortuary school, I'm sure, all the liquids and the body integrity and anatomy and physiology and pathology and all that. But so much of what you do has to just be instinct. Like you can't teach someone to treat me like you treated me. You have to be able to do that. Are there people that go into mortuary school that don't end up having that and realize maybe they can't be a funeral director?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've seen it in classes. A lot of it with the younger ones that go in because they think it's really cool to say that they work with the dead and make it a big like goth thing. And I'm like, I like creepy as much as everybody. I love horror movies as much as everybody. But that's not what this profession's about. This profession is about compassion. This profession's about the living. Everyone's like, how? I'm like, because it's about the people left behind who need help with guidance in trying to figure out, okay, what are the next steps? Because when your dad died and you called, I saw my friend Hala, who was about to answer the phone, I saw the name and go, I'm answering it. Yeah. She's like, okay.
Okay. Yeah. People also must bring in their like religious beliefs or what they've been taught. So much of how we view death is how we believe it's to be, like depending if you're Catholic or Episcopalian or Jewish or Hindu or Muslim or Baha'i, we all come in with our different ideas on it. And I know we're taught, not that it makes a difference when it's your child, but that death is hard for us, but not for the person that's died, that wherever their spirit goes is so much better and answers so many questions that they're fine. And I've had enough connection with Molly since her death to know that she's fine. And it eases my mind. But the whole process of saying goodbye to your loved one, I remember my mother sort of made a snarky little, she's not in there anymore. It was at the funeral home and I was kissing her face, her cold cement-like face. And I'm like, see that shoulder dimple right there? I grew that. Like, see this elbow crease? I grew that. You see those eyelashes? I grew that. Like, I'm sorry. I'm attached to the body because
that's your baby.
Yeah, exactly. So you must have to be really, really flexible.
Yes. We learn about different religions when we're in school. We also take a psychology class, but to learn different ways people grieve because you need to be open-minded. I really think the biggest attribute to a good funeral director is an open mind. Yep. Right. You just got to, because otherwise nothing will get done. Right. That's why when you called for your dad, I went right to Mark. I looked at Mark, I go, I want you to take care of this. Barb is a really good friend of mine, and we also discovered a while ago. Fun fact, everyone, we discovered a while ago we're like distant cousins somehow.
Yeah. We don't want to go into the details of how that might be.
Yep, but we did figure that out. So I looked at him, I go, please. And Mark's like, absolutely. And then Mark knew you.
Yes, we're sitting. So this is another thing about the funeral industry that I think people don't always realize. So connections come up. So we're sitting at a table and we're chattering away. And Mark's looking at me and looking at me and looking at me. And he's like, St. Paul's Church. And I'm like, what's your last name? And he's like, Barton. I'm like, oh my God. So we're just in choir together and we're shitheads. You know, we're 11-year-olds in school don't want to behave, right? It was a great connection. And he was fantastic. And let me say, when you're saying about flexibility and compassion and open mind, anything I suggested, he responded favorably to. If he couldn't make it happen exactly the way I thought it could happen, he would have alternatives. Or this is what we can do. How does this feel? You know, like it was never like yes or no, ever. It was always like, okay, let me make that happen for you. You know, everything that we wanted happened for us just fine. It was wonderful. Back to mortuary school. If you were a full-time student, would you take like 4 classes at once, or would it have still only been 2?
2. They usually recommend no more than 2 because of how intense they are. Because
Yes.
they're really intense. You meet once a week, so much homework.
Yeah.
A lot of studying, and you have quizzes every week, and those are a big portion of your grade. And then we have the midterms and the finals, and those are huge portions of the grade. And it's always like, oh, I think my heart was like this all the time, and my anxiety like this all the time. Poor Drew was like single dad in it for so long because I'd be locked myself in the room just to get homework done.
Although I feel like he gets it though. Like he's a big picture thinker. Like I think he strikes me as someone that understands that sometimes it's a struggle for a long while, but there's a greater purpose in the struggle, you know? So I'm not surprised he was supportive of you. But the fact that he said, yes, do this, but get your ADHD checked first, huge, big picture thinker right there.
Yeah.
Because he knew you could do it, but probably knew it wasn't going to happen easily if you weren't 100% there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
awesome.
And he is, because he has what you call the neurotypical brain, and my brain's very neurodivergent.
Yes.
He says it's a lot easier now that I'm on the right medication and taking care of it.
So what was your hardest, if you had to pick one class that was the hardest in school, what was it?
Microbiology and sanitation.
Oh. Now, is that 2 different classes or was that one entire
One class, all in one, and it's like so difficult because you had to learn all the different bacterias and prions and viruses, and my brain is like swimming, and then how to counteract them. It was so difficult. I managed to pass that class,
obviously, because here you are.
but
Wow. Yeah. You see, you don't even you don't think about any of this, but there's so much you have to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so how much? So 2.5 years roughly of school?
Yeah, for me it was 2.5 years.
Now, did you have to do any sort of internships?
2 of the classes was clinical 1 and clinical 2. In clinical 1, I did like a cold call to Bennett Funeral Home, and I talked to them. The one who was the location manager at the time, funeral director, she was a graduate of Fine Mortuary. So she took me on. She goes, I'm taking you on, and I'm not the type to really take on someone for clinical, so I'm putting in a lot of trust. So she took me on, and with the clinicals, you have to observe different funeral styles. You have to observe 5 embalmings for one clinical and then 5 embalmings for the other clinical. I started kind of watching the embalmings it was interesting to see the different styles of embalming with different funeral directors, and also with someone who only works with cadavers. It's so different.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to see. In between, I had comprehensive review, which was a really tough class because it was pretty much all your classes combined into 10 weeks. So each week a different class.
Oh my God.
It was so hard. And
it gives me a headache thinking about it.
Yes, I lived on Excedrin and caffeine. Diet Coke and coffee were my best friends.
Yeah. Oh, I believe it.
Chelsea, actually, before I asked her to become for clinical 2, because I just wanted to get through comprehensive review, sent me a text asking me what my plans were after I graduated school. And I'm like, well, eventually get a job in the funeral home. And then she's like, would you like to, while you're in school right now, work part-time at Bennett Funeral Home and then eventually go full-time? And I'm like, yes, please. So I got hired via text message. Not many people can say that. It just fell into my lap. And then I did my clinical 2 there. And now I work pretty much half the time at Bennett Funeral Home and the other half at our sister funeral home in Manchester, McHugh.
Yeah.
Because they're both part of Dignity. I work both. And I'm very happy.
So you have mortuary school. Now you work. Is there anything in the actual working in the industry that surprised you? You know, you go to school and you learn all this stuff. When you started working, were there things that happened that you had no idea would happen or that were a surprise to you? Or did it all seem to follow what you learned?
It kind of followed what you learned, but pretty much, and this is what Mark told me, and it's true. He goes, okay, you're doing great in school. Once you graduate, forget 80% of what you learned because a lot of it applies to other states and stuff, not New Hampshire and blah, blah, blah. And it's true. So I was like, okay. But I do see, and one thing that they don't teach you in funeral school is you will get yelled at by certain family members sometimes. You will sometimes see fights in the arrangement room. You will sometimes have to call police during call-in hours because the family didn't want theirs showed up. Yes, that has happened. We've had to call the police. To me, it's like sad all around for the person who was asked to leave, and then for the family involved, they don't need that added stress. But
Right.
there's so much drama in funeral homes. Like I could write a book about it, but
Yes,
some of it I
yes.
can't.
No. You need to like a master's in social work, and then a certificate in anger management and
Yeah.
David Kessler's grief certificate. You could have so many degrees that all would be completely usable in your job because it's
Yeah.
all of it. You have to comfort people. You have to hold people up. You have to be stern with people. You have to say no when they want to hear yes. You have to say yes when they want to hear no. I just imagine, because I just look at Molly's whole thing was just the biggest. And I think what I learned from that experience was how the funeral industry is really about taking care of families. And
Yes.
and that's the first thing that happens. And the second thing is the details of the body and all that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, boy, it takes a special kind of person to do all this. What's the hardest part for you now?
I think the hardest is when it comes to discussing prices. It is an expensive,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
expensive thing. And it just breaks my heart when some people just can't afford certain things.
Right, right,
And it's
right.
like, I wish I could.
No, and that's the thing that, that's our capitalistic society. We don't always have built-in procedures for these kinds of things. For Molly, we got our beautiful pink casket free because she was a child. That was like such a huge, it just felt like a gift, like this big multi-million dollar company understood that that meant a lot to us. They got us a pink casket like in 72 hours. It was like not a problem. We wanted her buried in a certain place, and there was a big slab of granite there, so she couldn't be buried there. So they came and got me and said, look, this is the logical place. All of these are available. What do you pick? And I'm like, well, this one's good. And then I bought all the plots around her because I didn't I didn't want her to be buried. I know it sounds so silly, right? But no one at Bennett's ever made me feel silly for these feelings, right? And they're like, well, Barbara. And I'm like, no. I just I'll do a deposit a hold on each of them, please, please. So there's like 7 plots right around Molly that I own. Now I sued a hospital and got a malpractice settlement, so I could afford that. But my family members know that they won't have to worry about that piece of it. Like there's a place for them. Not everyone has that. For Molly, we had this massive fundraiser with all those Molly B shirts. And that t-shirt fundraiser paid for her burial and her graveside service, and things cost money. You can't get away from that. So it's not like you can give free funerals to people because they cost money. Yeah, that must be hard, the money part. That's hard with anything.
I
Yeah.
did have one that actually, my favorite part, I know it sounds weird. I do love going on the removals and taking the person in my care. Because one thing I do that not everybody does, if the family's around, depending on the situation, I read the situation. If it's
Yeah.
a suicide, I'm not going to ask because it's just too much going on.
Yeah.
If it's like a natural death or hospice, I'll ask, oh, what's their favorite music or favorite song? I'll play it on the way to the funeral home. I just started asking that because I'm huge into music. I love music.
Yeah.
So I do that. And there was one case where, unfortunately, it was really tragic. It was a 16-year-old child car
Yeah.
accident. And when I got to the scene to take her in our care, her father was there and her little sister was there because the cops called them and stuff.
Yeah.
So after I talked to the father, unfortunately, they ended up going to another funeral home because of a miscommunication with the police. They thought they asked for one, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So we didn't charge anything, but we did My friend did an amazing job with the restorative care on her.
Yeah.
And we did not charge the family anything for that. Usually we'll charge like a little bit of a fee, but it would go charge other funeral home. Nope, it was a gift from us to the family.
Yeah.
I saw the daughter there, the 15-year-old daughter, and she was in tears. So I chatted with her for a bit to make sure she was okay.
Yeah.
And the father was like, I guess he called my boss and was like, the person who did the removal, she was amazing. She made sure my daughter was okay, and that meant the world to me. And she gave me as much time as I needed gave us both as much time as we needed with our daughter. So it made me feel better knowing that they were taken care of.
I can utterly relate to how, as a parent and as Gracie as a sibling, how that feels. We donated Molly's eyes, and the Oregon people said, well, we'll pick her up and bring her to Waltham. And I'm like, no. I'm not letting my daughter be taken from Dartmouth Hitchcock to Waltham. No, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Like, I couldn't do it. And so the hospital and they arranged to just do it all at Dartmouth. And Glenn went up at like 11 at night because they got it done and brought her home. And he texted me at like 1 a.m. I got her. She's safe. She's with me. One of my ex-boyfriends was Molly's main nurse, and he sat. I know it's not logical, but she was going to be alone in a hospital morgue, and she's a little naked 13-year-old, like in a hospital Johnny. Like, I was horrified. Like, no. Like, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. And the nurse got someone to cover a ship, and he sat outside the drawer there, sat with her until they came and did her eyes, and he watched that procedure, asked if it was okay because he could learn about it. And then Glenn arrived and made sure Molly got into Glenn's vehicle. And then Glenn texted me, I'm heading back. And then like an hour and a half later, she's safe. She's at the funeral home now. You can come see her in the morning. Like, unless you've gone through it, like, so you caring for that girl and letting her know that reaching out to her is life-saving in a time like that. So it's wonderful that you're willing to do it, because I know not everyone can, but you can't be in your job, I think, if you're not willing to assess the scene and say, okay, I really need to go talk to this one and make sure she's in a place where I can do what I need to do before you do what you need to do. Like, I get it. That was a good thing that you did.
Yeah, that one, I just felt like I needed to talk to that girl, because I talked to the father first to make sure and ask questions, and he was very stoic. He was holding his tears back but you can tell he was grieving. And then his daughter was on FaceTime with their mom, because their mom wasn't in the state at the time. She was away with one of their other children. So she was there. And then I talked with the daughter a bit, and I noticed, and the reason why I brought up the music thing, the daughter was listening to a song over and over again. And I just asked her, I'm like, is there a special meaning of that song for you and your sister? She goes, it's her favorite song in the world right now. So I asked her the name of it, and I played it on the way to the funeral.
Yeah, see, that just makes me cry.
Yes, over and over again.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like, if you want someone to trust you to put them in their care, you need to be just as kind. I treat them as if I treat that little girl as she were my baby.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, kept referring to her as baby girl.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, and as tragic as those moments are, they're so charged with spirituality and love and connection, like all that universal energy that some people call religion, and some people call God, and some people call a higher power, and some people call chemistry or physics. But I feel like all that comes into play in those moments. Like, you're not just Jenn anymore. You're something utterly different, if that makes any sense at all. Wow. People don't just die from 9 to 5. Is your schedule wacky sometimes?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I do go to work pretty much from like 8 to 4, but there are certain nights where, yes, I leave work, but I have to have my phone on and the volume up, because I'm on call until like 8 o'clock the next morning on Wednesday night. And then I do the rotating Friday, Saturdays.
Yeah.
But there are times where if someone is on call and they're not answering the phone, they'll call everybody. There's been times where I've gone out when I wasn't even on call.
Right, because the person can't be reached. Yeah.
Yep. And I don't mind. I really don't. If I'm able to do it, I will do it.
Yeah.
It needs to be done.
Yeah. Wow. If somebody came up to you and asked advice on it, like, should I go into it or I'm doing it, is there any advice or suggestions that you would give to people if they're considering a career in the mortuary, funeral industry?
That's a good question. Well, advice, I would suggest set yourself up with a therapist. Yes, I can turn it off, but there will be times when it's a child or it's someone like firefighter or something, and it will reach you down in your soul and make it difficult, but you still gotta get through it. I would suggest if you don't want therapy, find a hobby to help calm your brain down.
Yeah.
I really would.
Yeah.
And that's my advice. If I think someone is going into it for the wrong, I would ask questions on why are you interested in this? Because this is something I've been interested in since I was like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
Because I was interested, I needed to know every little thing. And I just feel like I want to make sure someone's going in for the right reasons.
Yeah. I imagine the process can weed out people that are not there for the right reasons. You might go into it with all these ideas. Then as you go through the classes and then you do the practical aspect of it and clinicals and such, you realize, okay, this is not for me.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Quirky little side. There's this TV show, which I'm sure everyone mentions to you, 6 Feet Under.
Oh my God, I love that show.
Me too. So I've binged it like 5 times.
Yeah, me too.
So I came upon it by accident, but here's the thing. So every time I watch it, I notice something different. But the fascination for me is the reality of living in a house that's a funeral home. Like they live there. So the kids are raised in that reality. The bigger understanding of life and death affects each character in the show. You can separate it out like, okay, here's the funeral part. Like I love how they do the show with each episode's a different death scenario and then the tragedies in the family. But watching that, part of what got me curious about real life, and it was shortly after the first time I watched it that you announced on social media that you had been accepted and were going to mortuary school. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just, so it's not, it's not like some freakish like obsession that I have with it. I just, death is the only thing we know for sure that will happen to us. We don't know anything else. And yet we avoid it. We don't talk about it. It makes us sad. We don't know how to explain it. And yet it happens to all of us. All we know for sure that will happen to us is that we'll die. And yet we separate ourselves from the process completely. I think if I were 20 years younger and thought, okay, maybe I'll consider a career path, I feel I'd do okay in that industry. I'm not afraid of a body. I'm not afraid of blood. I'm not squeamish around that kind of stuff. I'd make a good nurse too, because again, the body and all the gross things it does don't faze me. Aside from all that part of it, the whole process of grief and death and what may or may not exist after we're here on earth, and it's a calling to me. Like, I've taken all the grief classes in my life after losing Molly. Rather than avoid it and stay away from it, I really do put myself out there all the time to help other people going through child loss. Not because I'm some great human being, because believe me, I'm not. But I'm drawn to the whole concept of it. So here's what I love about one of your answers. First piece of advice, get a therapist. We have this idea that therapy is for people who have a problem. No. Therapy is how you process big things.
Yes.
And that's just such a illustrator, such a descriptor of what your life is, that you pour yourself into helping other people in a time that they just want none of it to be true. Like it just fascinates me, Jenn, and not in a creepy, dead body way, more so the process and the procedure. So you're happy you did it? You're happy you went to mortuary school?
I think it's one of the best things I've ever done for myself, because I've always been the type to do everything for everyone else. And after talking with Drew, and then when it came time to actually start it, I kept saying, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I should do this. And he goes, well, we paid for it, so you have to. I'm like,
yeah,
I can't.
You bought it. That's right. You bought it. You're going to use it and you're going to like it.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
And there were many times I wanted to quit because I was like, I don't know if I'm built for this. And he's like, no, you are built for this. But I think it's the best thing I've ever done. I like meeting the families. I like meeting the people. I like talking to the people. I like learning about, because I'll ask them, oh, can you just tell me about your father? Like, yes, I need to learn vitals and stuff, but I want to learn what made that father that.
Right.
Like, what were their favorite things? The weird questions like, oh, what's their favorite music? What's their favorite color? What's this? What's that? What makes them tick? Like,
Right.
I
Well,
don't know.
that's so helpful to the families too, because people have this idea that they shouldn't bring up Molly because it'll make me sad. Well, okay, no, I'm sad already every day. I love talking about her. And so when someone has an interest in her, especially in those moments, like when she was being removed from life support, that's like a 30-minute procedure. You don't just unplug them. There's
Yeah.
a million things to do and IVs to take out and machines to turn off. And the whole time they were doing it, they're chatting away with her. Okay, Molly, I'm going to pull these needles out now. I'll do the best I can here. And I just said, that's really kind that you're doing it. And the nurse, it was Chaz, my ex-boyfriend, and he's like, I couldn't not do it. She's a person, and he worked in the PICU, the pediatric intensive care unit. So he's seen dead children. And how he feels is, I have to talk to their children. I wouldn't want to do all this to somebody's child and not talk the child through it. The dead alive piece didn't matter. And that's how it seems it is with you. Like, what does it matter what his favorite song is? Well, it matters because I'm taking care of him.
Yeah.
Like, the more I know about him, the better care I can give him. Even if he, yeah,
Yep.
good
And
that
I
you see
do.
that.
When I'm moving them around, and if I accidentally bump them, I'll be like, "Oh, I am so sorry," and we'll talk to them as if,
Yeah,
and I do that. I'll talk out every little step I'm doing with them
yeah,
because they're a person.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, one thing I love about Bennett's too. So in the Baha'i faith, we don't embalm, but we wash and shroud the bodies with these thin, like linen shrouds. Yeah, we did that for my dad. So I didn't do it, but a group of, Baha'is got together and they say a prayer and they sing. And it's this whole thing that you do to sort of wash the body, wash away the earthly stuff and prepare them for their, forever in the ground peace. And Baha'is believe that the soul sort of takes its time, doesn't just leave the body instantly, that it's sort of around and still connected to it. And so the better care you give the body, the easier the separation is for the soul. All those things that funeral directors do are also the same thing, right? It's taking care of the person that used to live in that body. The funeral industry is super supportive of that. I mean, I haven't worked with other funeral homes around this specific thing, but Bennett's has always been super great about arranging it and, having the body ready. And I've only washed one body. And I will say that while it was hard for me because it was a woman that I knew and I didn't like that she had died, but I had this amazing goodbye with her as we washed her with rose water and sang to her and wrapped her arms and did everything that we needed to do. It's not for everybody, I get it, but there's so much joy and beauty in the whole transition from here to there. But we just get so sad, I think. I don't know.
I feel like it's been a life-changing field for me because I feel like I'm closer to my kids now than I was before. Even though I've always been really close to my kids and I always love my kids, I'm seeing like, oh, time is really short. Time is really precious because I was beginning to kind of live on autopilot mode and yeah, whatever. I always got tomorrow, got tomorrow.
Yeah.
Nope, no.
No, yeah, that's true. You must see. Right, I bet. Oh gosh, I bet. Because you're seeing the end of someone's life on a daily basis. God, people won't understand, but I think you're incredibly lucky. You're lucky that you saw this inside yourself. You're lucky, you're lucky that the pieces came in play for you to make it happen. And I also think that you're doing what you're supposed to do. That's how it sounds to me.
I feel like I'm in that place.
Jenn, thank you so much for doing this. I know that you were a little anxious about it. Everyone that I have on is anxious about it, but in this little neighborhood of Concord, I have a woman with achondroplasia, which is the number one cause of dwarfism. She was excited to do an interview, but also nervous. And then I have Tim Andrews, who just had a kidney transplant, and his kidney came from a pig, and it's like the
Oh,
first
wow.
one. And then you deal with one of the most mundane, everyday, unique, amazing, indescribable things that happens, which is death. It's mundane because it happens to people every day, but it's unique and amazing and horrible and wonderful and sad and happy because it's this huge event in the transition of a person from here to there. So one little neighborhood in Concord. In my love of my neighborhood in Concord and keeping the hometown connection into my podcast alive, I want to thank you, Jenn, for being willing to talk to me. We're all going to die, everybody. We don't want to think about it because it can be scary and unknown and we put it off and whatever, but we will all one day die and somebody will be talking to Jenn or someone like Jenn about what to do with their loved ones. And so I, for one, am glad that I've had the opportunity to learn what you have to do to be that person. So be good to yourself. Listen to Jen when she says that she thinks differently now that she has this job, because you can't just put it off till tomorrow because you don't know about tomorrow, right? So it sounds like you're much more in the moment and mindful. So be good to yourself. Be good to someone else. Let them know you care about them and that you're there for them. Play their favorite song, even if they don't know you're playing it. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.